Oliver had been to the works to be mended. Some troublesome cars tricked him, and the Great Western engine fell into the turntable well. Now Oliver was as good as new, but he was still worried about cars. "I'd rather not use them," he puffed to himself. But the cars sang songs rude and loud. Scruffy, their leader, led the chorus.
Oliver's no use at all, thinks he's very clever, says that he can manage us, that's the best joke ever. When he orders us about with the greatest folly, we just push him down the well. Pop goes Ollie.
Thomas, Duck, and Percy were shocked. "Be quiet," they ordered. But they couldn't be everywhere, and everywhere they weren't, the cars began again.
Oliver's no use at all, thinks he's very clever, says that he can manage us, that's the best joke ever.
At last, the engines gave up. "We're sorry, Oliver," they said. "It's really my fault," said Oliver sadly. "I shouldn't have fallen in the turntable well." Toad, the brake van, felt sorry for Oliver, too. Next morning, he spoke to Douglas.
"I'm worried, Mr. Douglas. This disrespect for engines, where's it going to end?"
"Who knows?" sighed Douglas.
"I've got a plan, Mr. Douglas. May I stay here today and help Mr. Oliver? We are both Great Western and must stand together."
"Certainly, Toad," replied Douglas and puffed away. Soon Toad was explaining his plan. "Goodness gracious, Toad, I don't think you should suggest such a thing to Oliver." But Oliver interrupted. "No, Duck, Toad's right. It's really my fault. I must put this trouble right."
"I meant no disrespect, you understand."
"Of course not, Toad. Anyway, driver says the same, and he's arranged it with the station master." "Very well, Oliver," conceded Duck, "but I must hurry. My passengers will be waiting. Good luck." "So long," smiled Oliver bravely, but he felt dreadfully nervous inside. Oliver marshaled the worst cars 2 by 2.
"That's the way, Mr. Oliver,"
whispered Toad.
"And if you leave that Scruffy till last, then you'll have him behind you, and you can bump him if he starts his nonsense." Hold back," whispered Scruffy, "and pass the word to the others."
The silly cars giggled. But Oliver knew what to do. There was plenty of sand on the rails, and his wheels gripped splendidly. He gave a great heave. "Oh!" groaned Scruffy. "I don't like this." "Go on," yelled Duck. "Well done, boy, well done." "Oh!" wailed Scruffy. "I'm coming apart!" And he did. Then there was trouble. "Well, Oliver, so you don't know your own strength, is that it?" No, sir," said Oliver nervously. Sir Topham Hatt inspected Scruffy. "As I thought. Rotten wood, rusty frames. Maybe if we put you back together, you'll earn yourself a better name." Nowadays, Oliver only takes the cars when the other engines are busy. But they're always quick to warn each other. "Take care with Mr. Oliver. If you play tricks on him, you'll never be the same car again." Scruffy has learned his lesson and says nothing at all.
All the engines on the island of Sodor look forward to Harvest Festival time. But most of all, they look forward to Sir Topham Hatt's Harvest Firework Display. Sir Topham Hatt came to see Thomas and James. "James, you are to collect the fireworks from the depot." James was overjoyed. Thomas wasn't happy at all. But I wanted to collect the fireworks, Thomas pouted. Sir Topham Hatt chose me because I'm as red as a rocket and twice as grand. James steamed proudly across the countryside. Brightest and best, he hummed happily to himself. He was having a wonderful day. Thomas was still upset when he arrived at the shunting yards. Bother James, he grouched, and he biffed the troublesome trucks crossly around the yard. When James arrived at the depot, he was very excited. The freight cars were all ready for him, filled safely to the top with fireworks. James was coupled up with the precious cargo, and he steamed away. Thomas shunted the last truck crossly into place. The troublesome trucks were glad that job was finished. Oh. James happily steamed along. He was thinking about the fireworks. He was imagining all the sparkles, flashes, and shooting stars when suddenly there was a loud noise. And James ground to a halt. "I will have to go and call for help," said his driver. Thomas puffed back into Knapford Station as Gordon was letting off his passengers. Children and grown-ups from all over the island had come to see the fireworks. Seeing the children cheered Thomas up, but Sir Topham Hatt looked concerned. "James has broken down," he said. "You must collect him, Thomas, and bring him back, or the fireworks display will be canceled." "Oh, no," cried Thomas. "Then all the children will be sad." And he set off to collect James. Thomas puffed across the countryside. Even with his light on, Thomas knew he had to be very careful. Thomas found James broken down on the track. "Hello, busted boiler," teased Thomas. "You don't look very useful now." James was upset. But when Thomas got behind James, he couldn't see ahead. "You will have to look out for me," said Thomas. James was cross. "You said I wasn't useful," he pouted. "But if the fireworks don't get to Knapford Station," puffed Thomas, "the display will be canceled." James didn't want the children to be sad, so he agreed to look out for Thomas, and they set off together. When the track was straight and clear, James called out, "Go faster, Thomas!" And Thomas did. They were soon working happily together and making good time. Sir Topham Hatt checked his watch. There was still no sign of Thomas or James. "It's very late," he thought. "It's almost the children's bedtime." Even Gordon was worried. "I'll have to cancel the display," said Sir Topham Hatt. So the disappointed children started to board the coaches. At last, they could see the signal lights. The signal had turned red. Thomas and James stopped. "Why would the signal be red?" puzzled James. "Maybe a passenger train is coming through," puffed Thomas. "Gordon must be taking the children back," cried James. Thomas and James were very upset. "We're here!" they cried. and sounded their whistles as loudly as they could. But no one could hear them. The children were all on board. Gordon was ready to depart. Then Thomas had a bright idea. "Send up a rocket," he told his driver. So his driver carefully lit a rocket. He stood well back as it whooshed into the sky. The rocket burst into stars. "A sparkling dragon!" cried Sir Topham Hatt. "It must be Thomas and James." "Stop, Gordon," he said. "The firework display is back on." The junction signal turned to green, and Thomas and James were soon on their way. James and Thomas were soon at the station. The children cheered. "Good work, Thomas!" cried James happily. "And good work, James," agreed Thomas. "Good work, both of you," boomed Sir Topham Hatt. That night, Thomas and James watched the fireworks together. "I think we are both useful engines," said James proudly. "But we are most useful when we work together," puffed Thomas.
A brand new tank engine was racing across the island of Sodor. He was very excited, and he didn't want to be late. "Right on time," said Sir Topham Hatt. Thomas and Percy looked at the big tank engine. He was very smart. "This is Arthur," said Sir Topham Hatt. "He's here to shunt trucks and pull freight." "Nice to meet you," puffed Arthur politely. "And he's got a spotless record," Sir Topham Hatt added. What's a spotless record?" whispered Percy. "It means he's never been naughty or made a mess," replied Thomas. The three engines were soon at work. Thomas and Percy were bumping freight cars. They knew this was naughty, but they were having fun. "Join in, Arthur," said Thomas. "No, thank you," wished the new engine. He'd never been naughty before. Arthur's first job was to push a trainload of fruit to market. The freight cars started to sing. "A route to tow, we want to go. The fruit's going off 'cause you're too slow." "How rude," huffed Arthur. This gave Thomas a naughty idea. "Sir Topham Hatt doesn't like the freight cars singing," said Thomas. "You must stop them." "Thank you," said Arthur. "I will." Arthur was glad he could keep the freight cars in order. "He'll never stop the freight cars from singing," laughed Thomas. Arthur chuffed cheerfully through the countryside. Soon the freight cars started singing again. "Chug, chug, chuff, you tug and huff, but you're so rusty you can't even puff." "Stop singing," huffed Arthur. "Freight cars should do as they are told." The foolish freight cars were cross. If they couldn't sing, they would teach Arthur a lesson instead. "We'll show him," they giggled. "He can't push us around." Arthur struggled over bridges, and he huffed and puffed through tunnels. He came over the top of a big hill. "You can't catch us," laughed the freight cars. "Whee!" But there was trouble ahead. Duck had stopped at the crossing at the bottom of the hill. Arthur's driver applied the brakes, but it was too late. Squashed fruit flew everywhere. Arthur was upset. His spotless record was ruined. "Beep, beep! What a mess!" puffed Thomas. Sir Topham Hatt was very annoyed. "What's happened here?" "The freight cars were singing. I told them to stop, but they made me go too fast." "Please, sir, it's my fault." Thomas told Sir Topham Hatt
what he had done. Arthur, it's fruitless for me to say more, but Thomas, you must help clear up this mess. Harvey arrived with the breakdown crane. He could see there was a lot of work to be done. Everyone worked hard, and Thomas took the loaded freight cars away. That evening, Arthur was having the squashed fruit cleaned out of his funnel. "I'm sorry I played a trick on you," said Thomas. "Thanks for owning up to it," replied Arthur. "Maybe spotless records are made to be broken," smiled Thomas. "And then mended again," finished Arthur. "Just like friendships."
Sir Topham Hatt's engines are proud of how useful they are. It makes them feel important, but none of them feels more important than Gordon. "Watch out," Gordon wheezed. "You'll get my paint all sooty." "Pulling freight cars is a sooty job," teased Salty, "but then you wouldn't know." "Of course not," Gordon huffed importantly. "Express engines don't pull freight cars. It wouldn't be dignified." "Dinghy fried?" puzzled Percy. "What's that?" "Dignified," Gordon corrected. It means that someone's too big for his buffers," teased Salty. "Pah," said Gordon, and he puffed away. That evening, fog covered the island of Sodor. Everything slowed down, and soon the docks were packed with waiting freight cars. This caused confusion and delay. Sir Topham Hatt came to the sheds. He was in a great hurry. "Henry, Thomas, and Percy," he said, "you must go to the docks immediately." "Yes, sir," they whistled. Then Sir Topham Hatt turned to the big blue engine. "You too, Gordon," he said. "I need a big engine to take the freight cars where they won't be in the way." "Freight cars?" huffed Gordon. He could not believe what he had heard. Gordon wasn't happy to be pulling freight cars. He waited impatiently while they were shunted into place. Hurry up, chuffed Gordon crossly. "Why the rush, Gordon?" asked Thomas. "If I must pull freight cars, then I'll show Salty how an express engine pulls freight cars," Gordon huffed. "Careful, Captain," Salty tooted. "You don't want to get too big for your buffers." But Gordon ignored Salty. The next morning, Gordon raced along with his heavy load. "Now this is how you pull freight cars," he puffed. But the signalman had accidentally left the point switched to the branch line. Gordon rattled through the junction. "That's strange. I'm on the branch line." "Oh no," the signalman cried. "Express trains aren't supposed to go that way." It was too late. Gordon had already raced into the distance. The old branch line was weak and rusty. There were signs warning all the trains to go slow. But Gordon ignored the signs. "I'm an express engine. I don't go slow," he said. And he went even faster. The branch line couldn't take his weight, and the rails buckled. "Oh, help!" Gordon cried as he slid off the tracks and into a field. No one was hurt, but poor Gordon felt very undignified. "What will Sir Topham Hatt say?" he groaned. He found out soon enough. Well, Gordon, said Sir Topham Hatt, you wanted to show Salty a thing or two, and you've certainly done that. You've shown him how silly it is to ignore go-slow signs. Sorry, sir, said Gordon, and he let out a sad wheesh of steam. Gordon was soon repaired and back at the docks ready for work, but he was very unhappy with himself. Everyone makes mistakes, said Thomas. Even you. Salty's sorry he teased you, puffed James. And I'm sorry I was too big for my buffers, chuffed Gordon. And all the engines gave a jolly toot. Even Gordon.